My name is Emily, 33 years old, head nurse at a general hospital in Oregon. Though my job requires focus, resilience, and sometimes sacrifice, in my family's eyes, especially my sister Samantha's, I was never good enough to be respected. The annual Mitchell family gathering took place on a Saturday afternoon, inside a nearly 5,000 square foot estate in West Lynn, where my parents lived with Samantha and her husband, Rick. The driveway was lined with gleaming SUVs, and a bright silver Mercedes GLC parked closest to the front door. I had to park down the street, next to the trash bins. "Emily, you made it!" my mom said as she came out to greet me, her long silk dress whispering across the stone tiles. Her smile was half warm, half worried, like she feared I might disrupt the picture-perfect setting Samantha had so carefully curated. "Traffic was awful, Mom," I said, adjusting my blue wool dress and smoothing a few stray hairs. "Sorry I'm late." "Our sweet little sister has arrived." Samantha's sharp voice rang from the second-floor balcony. She descended in a form-fitting Zimmermann dress, red wine in hand. "Of course, buses don't exactly fly on weekends, right?" I gave a small smile, swallowing the lump in my throat. "I drove, Sam. It's just that the employee lot at the hospital's not that convenient." "Still doing the nursing thing?" Samantha gave me a once-over like she was evaluating a clearance item. "Rick and I just closed on our third vacation home in Colorado. You really should think about your future, Emily. A job like yours, exhausting and barely pays." Rick chuckled, that kind of empty laugh meant to reinforce an old, tired joke. I glanced around the room. Relatives in tight clusters, full glasses in hand, chattering away. I felt like an ink stain on a white tablecloth. My father appeared, holding a glass of whiskey. "Samantha, why don't you tell everyone about that new coastal project?" "Oh yes." Samantha lifted her glass. "Everyone, may I have your attention?" The room hushed. Instantly. I reached for a glass of juice from a passing tray, already sensing something was off. "Rick and I are eyeing a stunning estate in Carmel by the Sea," she announced, her eyes flicking toward me. 6 bedrooms, infinity pool, ocean view, absolute paradise. But of course, not everyone is in the position to pursue that kind of investment. I could see it coming. My grip on the glass tightened. "Emily," Samantha continued, her tones silky but laced with venom. "I heard you were having a little financial trouble? I saw a few collection letters in your mailbox when I stopped by last week." "Nothing to be ashamed of. We all struggle sometimes." The air froze. One uncle coughed awkwardly. A cousin avoided my eyes. My mom pressed her lips together. My dad looked toward the ceiling, searching for an escape. "I never said I was having trouble," I replied calmly. "And those were loan ads, not collections." "Oh, don't be embarrassed. Everyone in this family cares about you." "I just think maybe it's time to be realistic. Ever consider trying something less intense?" I smiled, but my insides were burning. Samantha had always known how to turn concern into a weapon, and today she fired it straight at my chest. I thought I was used to it. Turns out, it never gets easier. Rick raised his glass. "To each their own. Some go into healthcare, some go into real estate. As long as it works out." "Exactly," I said, eyes locked on Samantha. "Some people make money flaunting it. Some just quietly work. And sometimes..." Silence is the sharpest response. Samantha narrowed her eyes. I turned and walked out to the backyard, heart pounding. A message popped up on my phone. "Everything's finalized. Transfer papers just signed." I gripped my phone tighter. The estate in Carmel by the Sea had just legally become mine. And she didn't know it yet. I left the party earlier than planned, leaving behind the crystal chandeliers and fake laughter of people who had always assumed I was the family's failure. My phone screen was still lit with a message from Mr. Mason, my personal attorney and real estate advisor, whom I had quietly worked with for the past 2 years. "Congratulations, Emily. The house is now in your name. No one has been notified, just as you requested." The beachfront estate in Carmel that Samantha had been flaunting everywhere as her lifelong dream was, in truth, an investment opportunity I'd been preparing for silently. 4 years ago, after a 19-hour shift, I overheard my sister sneer in front of our relatives that I was nothing more than a glorified bedpan cleaner. I didn't argue. I went home, opened my laptop, and started learning about investing. I didn't have a flashy financial advisor or a mentor to guide me. I learned through YouTube, secondhand books from flea markets, and chance conversations with patients who were retired advisors, accountants, even attorneys. I enrolled in online courses at night and picked up extra weekend shifts. No one questioned why I lived so frugally. It bordered on extreme. Samantha, of course, loved offering an explanation. "Emily's just scared of being poor." She had no idea that every overtime paycheck, every hospital bonus, even tax refunds, I funneled all of it into my investment portfolio. I started with healthcare stocks, moved into real estate investment trusts, and then shifted to small rental properties on the outskirts of Salem. By the time I bought my second apartment, Samantha was still posting $80.00 lunches from Napa Valley on Instagram. About a year ago, I noticed she kept bringing up Carmel. From her stories touring open houses, to photos of her clutching wine glasses with blue ocean backdrops, I started piecing the clues together. There was one estate she visited 3 times, each from the same angle, always captioned with, "Someday." I sent that photo to Mr. Mason. A week later, he sent back the documents. "The owners are willing to negotiate if we move quickly. They want to leave the market and retire in Florida." I didn't hesitate. I paid using funds from 3 properties I'd sold just a month earlier, plus returns from my stock investments. Ironically, while I was quietly closing the deal, Samantha kept bragging about a major deal about to close. She told everyone the house was being held for her. Nobody else had a shot. I don't know if that was true or just another of her usual exaggerations. But one thing I did know, she had never placed a deposit, nor signed a single document. Just words. As always, I asked for the entire transaction to be kept private. No public listings, no buyer name updates, nothing flagged on the major real estate sites. I wanted the surprise to land at the perfect moment, and nothing felt more fitting than the announcement dinner Samantha was planning for the end of the month. She'd even texted the family group. "Big surprise coming." While she was busy choosing menus and booking a table for over a dozen people at a French bistro, I was scheduling appointments with an architect. The house, while beautiful, needed a few things addressed before I could move to the next phase. That afternoon, I stood in the great room, beneath soaring ceilings, facing the full-length windows that opened to the endless shoreline. The sound of waves breaking on stone, the scent of pine, and the golden hour's sun quietly filling the space, felt like a reward earned from 7 years of silent effort. I didn't buy this house for revenge. I bought it because I could. But if it just so happens to shatter someone's dream, maybe that's fair too. No one knows I own this place yet. Saturday night, my parents' estate lit up like an upscale soiree. String lights hung along the white wooden fence, and a buffet table stretched out with an Italian menu catered from a fine dining spot in Lake Oswego. In the garden corner, a small jazz band played "Autumn Leaves" so softly, it felt like we were living in a Nancy Meyers film. I arrived on time, parked my old sedan 3 blocks away, and walked in. My simple black dress made me practically disappear into the sea of Gucci, Hermes, and Versace. I didn't need to stand out. I just needed the right moment. "Emily, you're here, Rick." Samantha's husband gave me a tight smile. "Sam's in the kitchen, planning the main event." "Main event?" I smirked. She clearly couldn't wait another second to show off. I slipped through the crowd and spotted my cousin Jeremy by the dessert table. He gave me a small shake of the head and whispered, "Ready?" "I was born for this moment," I said, keeping my voice steady. My parents sat beneath the back patio. My mom wore her usual worried expression, and my dad was glued to his phone. When they saw me, my mom squeezed my hand. "Honey, I'm glad you came. Just help keep things pleasant, okay?" I nodded without saying a word. Samantha made her entrance like a Broadway lead, in an off-shouldered white dress, Prosecco in hand. "Good evening, everyone," she beamed. "Tonight isn't just a party, it's the beginning of something new for Rick and me." All eyes turned to her. I wondered how many times she rehearsed that speech in the mirror. "We've just finalized what I'd call a dream come true," Samantha announced, raising her glass. "The beachfront estate in Carmel is now being held for us. 6 bedrooms, infinity pool. And yes, a private beach. It's all thanks to hard work, vision, and knowing when to strike." Applause broke out. I glanced over at Rick. His brow furrowed as his phone lit up. He stared at it, then discreetly handed it to Samantha. She blocked him immediately. "Not now, Rick, I'm getting to the best part." "But it's..." "No, don't ruin this." She turned back to the group, glowing. "We've already placed the deposit, and we'll be signing the final paperwork next week." I stood still, took a calm sip of sparkling apple cider, and set the glass down. The moment had come. "Sam," I said, soft as a breeze but loud enough to hush the crowd, "I think you should check your email." Samantha frowned. "Excuse me?" Rick leaned in to whisper again. She snatched the phone, eyes scanning the screen rapidly. "No way," she muttered. "What is it?" my mom asked, her voice rising with concern. "The house. It was sold," Rick answered. 3 days ago. To someone else." Samantha turned to me, panic and confusion in her eyes. "No. That's impossible. They said they were holding it for me. I told everyone." "And that's the problem," I said, stepping forward and pulling up a document on my phone. "You talked, but never actually acted." I didn't say much, I just did it. I handed the phone to my mom. Her hands trembled as she read. "Emily, is this real?" "My name is on the title transfer," I stated. 3 days ago. "The deal is closed, paid in full. No one's holding anything anymore. The house belongs to me." The backyard went silent. Samantha stared at me like she was seeing a ghost. How did you even do this?" she asked, her voice cracking. 7 years of back-to-back ICU shifts, by not spending on what you called success. And by learning, quietly, from every single one of your bragging sessions at family dinners. Jeremy let out a quiet cough, clearly suppressing a laugh. My dad sighed. My mom sank into her seat, like the air had been sucked out of her. Vic spoke carefully. "Emily, you really own that house." I nodded. "Which is why tonight's event just turned into the most unintentionally funny performance we've ever seen." Samantha stood frozen, her face drained of color. "You did this? To humiliate me?" "No," I replied. "I did this to remind everyone, staying quiet doesn't mean being weak." Turned and walked away, leaving behind stunned silence and a sea of shattered assumptions. Samantha disappeared from the party right after I revealed the purchase agreement. My mother tried to stop her, but she pulled away and rushed into the house. Moments later, I heard a bedroom door slam upstairs. No one dared follow. The air, left behind, felt suspended, like we had just watched a play where the lead actor stormed off stage without warning. I stayed for another hour to chat with a few relatives. Most were more polite than in previous years. A few even said things like, "You're incredible," and "What a surprise." But I knew better. Their admiration only surfaced because my name now appeared on the deed. Before that, I was just Emily, the nurse. Probably doesn't know the first thing about investing. The next morning, I was sorting patient charts at the hospital when I got a message from Rick. "We need to talk, urgent." I left my shift a bit early and drove to a small cafe by the river. Rick was already there. No coffee, no phone. Just a black folder sitting on the table. "I know you bought the house," he said as I sat down. "And I know why Sam completely lost it." I nodded slightly. "Because she lost a game she thought she already won." Rick sighed and pushed the folder toward me. "It's more than that. These are statements from 3 credit cards in my name, 2 of which I never opened." I flipped through the pages. Charges from luxury boutiques, spas, first-class flights to Hawaii, Miami, New York. Over $8,000 spent every month. Total debt? More than $72,000. "Sam forged my signature," Rick said, eyes steady but voice gravelly. "She also used my name to apply for a $50,000 personal loan from the local bank." I tightened my grip on the folder, a cold shock flooding my chest. I always thought Samantha was just flashy and shallow, but I hadn't realized she had crossed the moral line like this. "She planned to use the Carmel house as collateral," Rick continued. "She told me that once we secured the property, she'd take out a loan under the guise of investment, then use that to pay off everything before I caught on. And I ruined that plan," I murmured, heart heavy. "No," Rick said. "Emily, you saved me. Saved this entire family from a financial sinkhole I didn't even realize I was standing in." I sat in silence. "Do my parents know?" "Not yet. She hasn't even told them half the truth." Rick leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. "Last night, after the party, I found the loan paperwork hidden in her vanity drawer. When I confronted her, she just cried and said, 'I just wanted to keep up appearances.' She admitted everything, even the forgery. I told her I needed time. I left at midnight." "What are you going to do?" Rick didn't answer right away. He opened his phone, tapped into the photo gallery and showed me a picture. A retainer invoice from a law firm that specializes in financial separations. "Appointment date, next Monday." "I don't know if this marriage is salvageable," he said slowly. "But one thing I do know. I can't keep pretending nothing's wrong while everything's collapsing." I didn't know what to say. I just rested my hand on the folder. Part of me felt relief that the truth had come out, but another part burned with bitterness. Samantha hadn't just ruined her own image. She'd dragged down the one person who had stood by her for a decade. Later that night, as I returned to my small apartment, I received a message from Mom. "Sam came home. It's worse than I thought. Can you come by tomorrow night? I don't know how to handle this." I stared at the message, torn. Should I go back and face this? Or let it unfold from the background like I always had? I opened the desk drawer and pulled out the Carmel house transfer papers. My name, Emily Sullivan, owner, stood boldly on the first page. I nodded to myself. This time, I won't step back. Not for anyone. Not for guilt. I'll walk in, face it, and speak the truth. Even if it means someone else has to break one more time. I arrived at my parents' house at exactly 6 p.m., just like Mom had asked. The Oregon sky that evening was overcast, thick gray clouds signaling a storm brewing. Not outside, but inside the living room, where nearly the entire family was already gathered. My father stood as I entered, his expression tenser than I'd ever seen. Mom sat curled on the edge of the couch, gripping a napkin like it was the last thing she could control. Samantha sat in the center of the room, hands clasped tightly. Gone were the designer clothes and flawless makeup. She wore an old sweater and jeans, her hair tied back hastily. If I didn't know better, I'd have thought she was someone else entirely. "Emily, thank you for coming," my mother began, trying to keep her voice soft. "Sam has something she'd like to say." I nodded, set down my bag and took the seat across from them. "I'm listening." Samantha took a deep breath. "I've done a lot of thinking. About everything. About what I've done. And I want to make things right." I said nothing. I know I've hurt you, she continued. I let pride and fear control everything, but the house in Carmel? That's my only chance to start over. I frowned. Start over how? By using it as collateral to pay off credit card debt? Or by building another fake image to cover financial collapse? She was quiet for a moment, then said softly, I need that house. No, I replied evenly. You need accountability. My dad stepped in, his voice rough. We're not here to assign blame. We want a solution. If you could sell the house back, or maybe transfer it somehow? I turned to him. I bought that house with savings, smart investments, and ICU night shifts that nearly broke me. While everyone assumed I was struggling with a nurse's salary, I was building something stable. No loans, no hiding. Emily, my mom said, her eyes pleading, she's your sister. And I'm your daughter, I said, more directly than ever before. But all these years, when did you take my side? Or did you just listen to Samantha and decide I was never quite good enough? The room grew thick with silence. Samantha looked up, her cheeks flushed. I didn't mean it like that. I was trying to help. No, I cut in. You were trying to protect your image. And when I stopped playing the supporting role you assigned me, I became a threat. My mom began to cry. My father stayed quiet, his gaze fixed on the carpet. Okay? Samantha said finally, her voice suddenly smaller. If I can't buy the house, maybe I can rent it. I need somewhere stable. I'll pay on time. I just need time to rebuild. Sam, I said calmly, if you truly want help, there are a dozen other ways. But using that house as a lifeline to keep pretending? No. I won't enable that. Samantha's hands clenched, her voice trembled. You're destroying my life. No. I stood. I'm saving you from the part of yourself that already did. I pulled out my phone and opened the text from Rick, Samantha's estranged husband, now living separately. It included screenshots, credit card statements, consumer loans, forged signatures. I placed the phone on the table, screen facing my parents. If you still think I'm the one being unfair by not handing over the house, take a look at what she's done. How much debt is in Rick's name? How much has she hidden behind this smart investor facade? Do you really want to mortgage this house to rescue someone who's never learned responsibility? The room fell completely silent. My mom sobbed. My dad took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes. I didn't come here to shame her, I said more gently. I came to protect what I worked so damn hard for, and I won't let anyone, not even family, take that away to fix their mistakes. I bent down, picked up my bag. If she truly wants to start over, then she can start with honesty. And I walked out the front door, leaving behind a house stifled by years of favoritism, illusions, and a reckoning no one dared face. Until tonight. 2 weeks after that tense family meeting, I sat alone on the balcony of my beachfront house in Carmel, watching the waves quietly roll against the rocks. The ocean breeze was cold but soothing, like an invisible hand calming my thoughts after days filled with conflict and emotional strain. I had done a lot of thinking. Not about Samantha, but about family. About the generations to come. About how, if I truly wanted to change something in the old, toxic cycle of this family, buying the house wouldn't be enough. I needed a bolder step. A new system. A structure that didn't revolve around favoritism, pretense, and secrets. And so, I created the Emily Sullivan Family Trust. I hired a lawyer, Margot Henley, a specialist in family law and asset management. It took us 3 meetings to draft the trust charter and legally transfer the ownership of the house from my name into the trust. It may have sounded crazy to some, but I knew I was doing the right thing. I didn't want the house to be a symbol of personal victory anymore. I wanted it to become something meaningful and lasting. Not for Samantha, but for those who truly valued what it represented. The conditions for using the house were clearly outlined in the trust charter. Any family member wishing to use the house must prove financial stability. No outstanding credit card debt. No history of financial fraud in the past 3 years. Each user must complete at least one financial counseling session with a professional appointed by the trust. The trust will cover the cost. Access to the house will only be granted if the financial advisor deems the person stable enough. No one is allowed to use the property as collateral under any circumstance. Any disputes over access will be handled by a neutral third-party arbitrator. I also included a surprise clause: 10% of all revenue generated, if the property is ever used for vacation rentals, film shoots, or events, will go into a scholarship fund, specifically for future generations in the family pursuing medical or nursing education. "You're building a whole system?" my cousin Jeremy muttered as he read through the charter. "Are you sure Mom, Dad, and Sam will go along with this?" "I don't need their approval," I replied. "I need them to understand that from now on, no one gets to bend the rules just because their last name is Sullivan." That evening, I invited the family over. Not for a celebration, but for a formal announcement. My mother arrived first, her eyes still puffy from nights spent worrying about Samantha. My father followed, offering a silent nod. Samantha showed up last. Wearing a beige cardigan, no makeup, no jewelry. The room fell silent as I laid out the folders in front of each of them. "Tonight, I'm not here to talk about the past. I'm here to talk about the future." I walked them through the entire trust structure. Every clause, every limit, every option. With each word, Samantha's hands clenched tighter. When I got to the mandatory counseling requirement, she snapped, "Who do you think you are, setting all this up?" "The person who bought this house with her own effort," I replied, "and who is now placing it into a trust, so it can be used fairly by everyone." My father flipped through the pages, pausing at the clause labeled Financial Transparency. He looked at me and nodded slowly. "Well done, Emily." My mother said nothing, but when I placed a hand gently on her shoulder, she gripped it tightly. I knew she understood, even if she couldn't say it yet. Samantha didn't sign. She stood halfway through, tossed the trust charter onto the table and said, "I don't need some charity disguised as rules telling me how to live my life." "No one's forcing you," I said, "but if you want to use this house, or any property connected to this trust, you'll need to follow the same rules as everyone else." Rick stepped out from the kitchen, where he had silently listened the whole time. "Emily's giving us a second chance. Not everyone gets that." Samantha paused at the door and looked back. A second chance? Or just another pretty trap to control everyone? I looked her straight in the eye. "Not everyone needs saving, Sam. But everyone deserves boundaries. And for the first time in this family, those boundaries are written into policy. For all, no exceptions." The door closed behind her, but this time, I felt no guilt. I felt clarity. I felt steady. 1 week after the trust announcement, I received a message from an unknown number. Just 4 words. "I want to start over." It was Samantha. I didn't reply right away. I needed to be sure this wasn't one of her usual ploys, those polished apologies that always led back to the same patterns. But 3 days later, I got an email from the financial counseling office working with the trust. "Samantha Sullivan has completed her initial financial assessment and enrolled in the volunteer debt restructuring program." I sat still, staring at the screen, surprised, cautious. For the first time, Samantha had taken a concrete step toward accountability without the dramatics. No blame. No excuses. Just action. I hadn't spoken to her until the trust's first executive meeting, where Jeremy was keeping the minutes and overseeing financial eligibility. The meeting took place in the living room at the Carmel house, bathed in soft morning light. My parents were there, Rick, too, seated quietly in the corner. And then Samantha walked in, wearing a plain shirt and jeans. No perfume. No designer shoes. No diamond-studded watch. "Hi everyone," she said quietly. No hair flip, no superiority in her eyes. Just Samantha. Bare. And maybe, for the first time, sincere. "I know I'm not exactly welcome here," she continued, standing tall. "And I'm not asking for any privileges. I just wanted you to know I've started the counseling program. I've canceled all my credit cards, closed out my discretionary accounts, and started paying off debts, one by one." Jeremy glanced at her updated credit report on the iPad and gave a small confirming nod. I said nothing. "I don't expect Emily to forgive me," Samantha said, turning toward me. "But I hope you can at least see." "I'm trying." I reached into my bag and pulled out a thick envelope, placing it on the table. Inside were all the documents related to the credit lines, loan accounts, and most importantly, the signature verification reports proving Samantha had forged Rick's name on multiple transactions. The room fell into silence. I slid the envelope toward Rick. "You have every right to take this to an attorney, if you want." Rick opened the envelope, scanning page after page, eyes steady on the lines of black ink. When he reached the last sheet, he looked up at Samantha. "You've done a lot to lose my trust." Samantha lowered her gaze, said nothing. "I've thought long and hard about this," Rick said evenly. "And I believe everyone deserves one chance. Just one." He pulled out the final document, the affidavit confirming fraud, and slowly tore it in half. No one clapped. No one sighed with relief. Just a moment of quiet, between people finally choosing to face what they'd rather avoid. "I don't need the house," Samantha said after a while. "I don't need to own anything right now. I just want to learn how to keep what actually matters." I nodded. "If you continue the counseling program, pay off at least 50% of your debt within 18 months, and don't create new liabilities, you'll be eligible to apply for use of the house, same as everyone else." "And if I fail?" she asked, eyes unblinking. "Then you can still come here," I said calmly. "But as a guest, not a beneficiary." She nodded. "That's fair." My father spoke for the first time that morning. "I'm proud of both of you." My mother wiped her eyes. This time not from heartbreak, but from relief. After the meeting, Samantha stepped onto the balcony. I followed, standing beside her, both of us staring at the ocean. We didn't speak for several minutes. "I used to think you'd never change," I said softly. "I used to think I didn't need to," Samantha replied. "Turns out, we were both wrong." I turned to look at my sister. For the first time, I didn't see a rival or a threat, I just saw a woman, trying to peel off the mask. I didn't forgive her right then, but I had opened the first door. Whether or not she stepped through was entirely up to her. 3 months after the first trust meeting, I walked out of the 12th floor glass office of Coastal Development Group in Monterey with a signed partnership agreement in hand. The ocean wind cut sharply across the walkway to the parking lot, laced with salt and the sting of February cold. But all I felt was quiet triumph. No spotlight, no applause. Just the solid weight of a victory, earned. The agreement allowed Coastal Development to build a luxury resort adjacent to the land our family trust owned in Carmel. In return, the Sullivan Trust retained full ownership of the beachfront estate and received 20% of all service-based profits generated from events held on the shared shoreline. Weddings, film shoots, corporate retreats. All proceeds would feed into 2 supporting funds, a maintenance reserve, and the Clara Sullivan Medical Fund, named after my grandma. That scholarship fund wouldn't just support family members pursuing careers in medicine, nursing, or public health, it would also offer 2 full scholarships annually to exceptional, underprivileged students from Monterey County. When I presented this at the April trust meeting, the room went still. not in disagreement, but because no one expected me to take it that far. My father, who once reserved all his praise for Samantha's strategic thinking, looked at me with something close to awe. "You're doing something I never imagined," he said. "Not just for our family, but for people who aren't even related to us." Jeremy, acting as secretary of the trust, murmured, "Emily, you've turned this house into something that produces value, not just something that looks good." He smirked, then looked at Samantha. "And you did it without an MBA." Samantha didn't argue. She simply nodded and said quietly, "I used to think success meant being admired. Now, I think it means being able to lift your head without having to apologize." Her changes weren't loud, but they were real. She moved into a smaller apartment, handled her own finances, traded in the least luxury SUV for a used sedan. The thing that shocked me most: she completed all 3 basic finance courses in the Trust's recovery program. One weekend, she volunteered to help run a financial literacy workshop at our old high school. Watching her stand on that small auditorium stage, talking about taking responsibility for your own mistakes, I knew she wasn't the same Samantha anymore. Our family dynamic shifted too. Not everyone became close overnight, but the favoritism was gone. When my niece, my eldest brother's daughter, said she wanted to become a pediatrician, my mom was the first to speak up. "If you really want to do it, sweetheart, I'll talk to Aunt Emily about the scholarship process." I turned to my mother in surprise. She took my hand. No apology, no explanation. But in her eyes I finally saw it. Recognition. The kind I had waited my whole childhood for. Change didn't come in a single sweeping moment. It came in small acts, repeated choices, and a system built on fairness, not habit. Every family member now had to apply in advance to use the Carmel house, submit proof of financial standing, and follow a rotating usage schedule. No exceptions. Not even me. Even Rick, who had once borne the brunt of Samantha's recklessness, returned. Not as Samantha's ex-husband, but as a part-time investment advisor to the trust. Together, we launched a new initiative for youth in the area. Early financial thinking for future generations. "You didn't just save a house," Rick told me. "You're rebuilding the foundation for everyone who comes after us." The June trust meeting closed with Jeremy reading the first quarterly financial report. $68,000, 0 cents in revenue from the Coastal Partnership. $25,000, 0 cents had already gone into the scholarship fund. The rest was being used to renovate the kitchen and community areas at the house. As everyone got up to leave, Samantha approached me with a small box in hand. "I found this in Mom's old room," she said. "You should have it." Inside was a handwritten letter from Grandma Clara, the one she wrote to me when I left for college. I had never read it. It vanished a week after I got the envelope. Her slanted cursive still looked like it had been written yesterday. "Emily, you don't have to be loud to prove your worth. Just do the right thing. And the world will have no choice but to listen." I held the letter tight, looked up at Samantha. "Thank you," I said. She smiled, truly, for the first time in years, not because she needed to be seen, but because finally she understood that she was enough. That summer, Samantha officially completed the 6-month financial counseling program, with a positive evaluation from the independent advisor. She had paid off nearly 40% of her total debt, voluntarily liquidated all non-essential assets, and permanently closed 4 credit card accounts. Gone were the designer brands, luxury cars, and overpriced Sunday. Instead, she lived in a modest 2-bedroom apartment on the west side of Eugene, and worked as a sales assistant at a small real estate office. "For the first time in my life," she told me, "I feel lighter, not having to pretend I'm someone I'm not." The family gradually began to accept this new version of Samantha, not because she was perfect, but because this time, she was genuinely trying. At the November trust meeting, she proposed launching a financial literacy workshop series for single mothers in rural areas. Not everyone's lucky enough to have someone pull them out of the mess like I did, she said, her voice steady. My mother began speaking to her more, not as a child to be protected, but as an adult to be listened to. My father, who had once trusted Samantha blindly, had grown more cautious but no longer harsh. He became the internal auditor of the trust, working with Jeremy to double-check funding approvals and maintain full transparency. On a December afternoon, our extended family gathered at the Carmel house to decorate for the holidays. Samantha carefully strung lights along the balcony, while my mother and I prepped gingerbread in the kitchen. As I reached for ingredients in the cupboard, Mom handed me a small oak box. "This is yours," she said. "Grandma Clara left it in her old closet. She meant to give it to you when you graduated, but, well, things got messy." I opened the box. Inside was a silver-plated necklace, its pendant engraved with the words, "Silence is not weakness." I clutched the gift, feeling the weight of years collapsing into that one moment. The night shifts, the dismissive stares, the words that were never answered. None of it felt like pain anymore. It felt like foundation. We had dinner outside that evening, under soft yellow lights and cool winter air. No more passive-aggressive comparisons, no more half-jokes loaded with old resentment. Just laughter, the scent of grilled food, and a strange new peace. Rick joined us too, not as a bitter outsider but as someone steady. Though he hadn't reconciled with Samantha, he remained in contact and supported her in key decisions. "I don't know what comes next," he told me as we stood near the Christmas tree, untangling ornaments, "but at least now she's being honest. With me and with herself." And that's enough to keep me from walking away. As for me, I no longer felt the need to prove anything. The trust was running smoothly, the scholarship program had expanded into a neighboring county, and I had started partnering with a nonprofit health organization to bring basic financial literacy into community college nursing programs. During a year-end workshop hosted by the Trust, I gave a short speech. It was the first time I had ever said this out loud. I used to think success meant recognition. But now I understand, real success is holding on to your values in silence, and letting your actions tell the story. The audience applauded, not just the guests, but my family too. Jeremy leaned over and whispered as we left, "You didn't just change the rules, Emily, you changed how everyone here defines success." I smiled, my eyes drifting toward the dark ocean. The waves still crashed. The sky still held its silence, but inside me, everything had shifted. No more pain buried in silence. No more dreams kept small. No more sister looking down at me like a shadow. Just a family. Not perfect, but learning to heal together. I didn't buy this house to get even. I bought it to protect myself. But it became something more. A beginning. A place where kindness could outlast resentment. And where values stood not on the loudest voice in the room, but on the one patient enough to listen and act when it mattered. And just like Grandma Clara wrote, silence is not weakness. Sometimes, it's the only way to rebuild. Solid, lasting, and unshakable. Emily's story reminds us that silence doesn't mean weakness, and quiet determination can create the most lasting change. In real life, many people silently endure unfairness, favoritism, or pressure from their families. But when they find the courage to set boundaries and act on their values, everything can shift. True success isn't about revenge. It's about rebuilding with fairness, strength, and compassion. Sometimes, the bravest choice is to walk away, quietly but firmly. What do you think about Emily's journey and the choices she made? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful stories about life, family, and transformation.